What if the key to unlocking Vancouver's championship potential is sitting in Hartford, frustrated and forgotten? There's something deeply satisfying about watching a team catch fire at exactly the right moment, and right now, the Vancouver Canucks are burning bright. With a 4-2-0 record to start the 2025-26 season and riding a 3-game winning streak, the Canucks are sitting pretty in third place in the Pacific Division. The vibes are immaculate, the confidence is sky high, and everything seems to be clicking at just the right time. But here's the thing about momentum in the NHL. It's fragile, fleeting, and can disappear faster than a hat trick in overtime. Smart teams don't just ride the wave, they build on it. And right now, there's an opportunity sitting on the table that could transform the Canucks from a hot team into a legitimate contender. Enter Brennan Othmann, the New York Rangers' former first-round pick, who's become the poster child for unfulfilled potential. This kid was supposed to be a cornerstone piece for the Rangers, a dynamic forward who could bring skill, grit, and scoring touch to Broadway. Instead, he's bouncing between the NHL and AHL, watching his career stagnate, while other players from his draft class establish themselves as legitimate stars. It's a story we've seen countless times in hockey. Talented prospect meets organizational logjam, development stalls, frustration builds, and suddenly everyone's wondering what went wrong. But here's where it gets interesting. One team's problem can become another team's solution. And for the Vancouver Canucks, Brennan Othmann might be exactly the kind of reclamation project that pushes them over the top. The trade that makes too much sense. Let's lay out the framework of what this deal could look like, because when you break it down, the logic is almost too obvious to ignore. Canucks get Brennan Othmann, Rangers get 2026 second-round pick, 2027 fourth-round pick on the surface. This might seem like Vancouver is overpaying for a player who hasn't proven he can stick at the NHL level. 2 draft picks for a guy who's spent more time in Hartford than Manhattan? That's a tough sell to some fans. But dig deeper, and you'll see why this trade makes perfect sense for both sides. For the Canucks, they're acquiring a 22-year-old former first-round pick who still has massive upside. This isn't some 28-year-old journeyman who is what he is. This is a young player whose development has been stunted by circumstances, not lack of ability. The talent is there, the work ethic is there, and most importantly, the hunger to prove everyone wrong is there. Those are the ingredients for a breakout, and Vancouver could be the perfect environment to cook up something special. For the Rangers, they're getting draft capital for a player who clearly doesn't fit their current roster construction. New York is loaded on the wings, and Offman has fallen victim to a numbers game that has nothing to do with his talent level. Rather than let him rot in the AHL and watch his value plummet to nothing, they're cashing out now while they can still get meaningful assets in return. It's cold-blooded business, but it's smart business. To understand why this trade makes sense, you need to understand what's happened to Brennan Othmann over the past few years. This wasn't supposed to be his story. When the Rangers selected him 16th overall in the 2021 NHL draft, they were getting a player who combined skill, physicality, and a scorer's mentality. He was supposed to be a building block, a player who could contribute immediately and grow into a core piece. Instead, he's become a cautionary tale about organizational depth and development philosophy. Offman has absolutely dominated at the AHL level. 21 goals and 49 points in 67 games during the 2023-24 season, followed by 12 goals and 20 points in just 27 games this past season. Those aren't just good numbers. Those are, this kid is too good for this level numbers. He's proven he can score against professional competition, proven he can handle the physicality, proven he's ready for the next step. But the Rangers haven't given him that step. He was sent down to AHL Hartford after failing to make the NHL roster this season, and that decision sent a clear message. There's no room for you here right now, and we don't know when there will be. For a young player trying to establish himself, that's devastating. You can only dominate the AHL for so long before the development benefits plateau and frustration sets in. When Elliotte Friedman talks, the hockey world listens. And what Friedman reported recently about Offman should have every team with forward depth issues picking up the phone and calling New York. Offman was sent down to AHL Hartford after failing to make the NHL team, and since that occurred, there's been conversations with other clubs about his future, Friedman wrote in his latest Insider notes. The Rangers have a lot on the wings, and it simply may be that he needs a fresh start elsewhere. Let's decode what Friedman is really saying here, because NHL insiders speak in a very specific language. When he says there's been conversations with other clubs, that means the Rangers are actively shopping Offman. When he says it simply may be that he needs a fresh start elsewhere, that's code for this relationship is over and everyone knows it. The Rangers have made their decision. Offman doesn't fit their plans, and they're willing to move him for the right price. This is exactly the kind of situation smart general managers exploit. The Rangers are motivated sellers. Offman's value is depressed because of his lack of NHL playing time, and there's a window of opportunity to acquire a talented young player at a discount. For Vancouver GM Patrick Allvin, this should be setting off every alarm bell in his office. Adam Gretz of Bleacher Report recently identified the Canucks as one of the top potential landing spots for Offman, and his reasoning is spot on. The Canucks needed some forward depth to begin with, and that necessity has only increased with the absence of Nils Hoglander, Gretz wrote. They need to find someone who is affordable and won't significantly increase the cost of the package. A struggling prospect that needs a change of scenery might be the perfect type of target in that sense. Let's break down why Vancouver checks every box for Offman and why this move makes strategic sense for the Canucks. First, there's the roster need. Vancouver's forward group is solid, but it lacks depth scoring, particularly on the wings. When injuries hit, and they always hit, the Canucks need players who can step in and contribute without the entire offensive system collapsing. Offman gives them that insurance policy, a player who can slot into the middle six and potentially provide secondary scoring. Second, there's the financial aspect. According to Puckpedia, Offman carries an $863,333 cap hit for this season. That's basically nothing in today's NHL, where average players are making $3 to $4 million annually. The Canucks can easily absorb that hit without any roster gymnastics or cap complications. For a team that's always operating close to the ceiling, finding affordable talent is crucial. Third, there's the development opportunity. Vancouver has shown they can develop young forwards, creating an environment where players can grow without crushing pressure. Offman wouldn't be expected to be a savior or carry the offense. He'd be given a defined role, clear expectations, and the opportunity to prove himself at the NHL level. That's exactly what he needs right now. Fourth, there's the coaching fit. Rick Tocchet has proven he can get the most out of players, particularly those with something to prove. His system emphasizes hard work, defensive responsibility, and playing the right way, all things that would benefit Offman's development. Under Tocchet's guidance, Offman could refine his game and become the complete player the Rangers thought they were drafting. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. What if Offman never becomes the player everyone thought he'd be? What if he's just a tweener who dominates the AHL but can't quite cut it at the NHL level? It's a legitimate concern, and it's the risk Vancouver would be taking by acquiring him. But here's the counterargument. The upside is worth the risk. At 22 years old, Offman is still young enough to develop and improve. His AHL production suggests he has legitimate offensive skills, the ability to score, create chances, and impact games. Those skills don't just disappear when you move up a level. They need to be refined and adapted. But the foundation is there. If Offman can translate even 70% of his AHL production to the NHL level, he becomes a valuable middle six forward who can contribute 15 to 20 goals per season. That's not superstar production, but it's exactly the kind of secondary scoring that championship teams need. And if he exceeds expectations and becomes a legitimate top six contributor, then Vancouver just pulled off a heist, acquiring a valuable player for pennies on the dollar. The beauty of this trade is the risk-reward ratio. Vancouver isn't giving up roster players or premium draft picks. They're investing a second and fourth round pick in a former first-rounder with upside. Second-round picks have maybe a 20 to 30% chance of becoming NHL regulars. Fourth-round picks are even longer shots. Offman, despite his struggles, has already proven he's better than the average second-round pick. The odds favor Vancouver in this scenario. From New York's perspective, this trade makes sense for different reasons. The Rangers are in win-now mode, with a roster built to compete for the Stanley Cup immediately. They don't have time to wait for Offman to develop, and they don't have roster space to give him the opportunities he needs to grow. It's not personal, it's just business. By trading Offman now, the Rangers accomplish several goals. First, they get draft capital that can be used to address other needs, either by selecting prospects or packaging picks for established players. Second, they clear a roster spot and remove a potential distraction. Having a talented young player stuck in the AHL can create tension and questions that the organization doesn't need. Third, they give Offman a chance to succeed elsewhere, which, believe it or not, actually matters to some organizations. The Rangers aren't giving up on Offman because they think he's bad. They're giving up on him because the fit isn't right. That's an important distinction. This isn't a talent evaluation failure. It's a roster construction reality. And recognizing that reality and acting on it is actually smart management. Early season trades are relatively rare in the NHL. Most teams want to see how their rosters perform over a larger sample size before making significant moves. But there are advantages to acting early, particularly in a situation like this. For Vancouver, acquiring Offman now gives him time to integrate into the system, build chemistry with line mates, and establish himself before the playoff push. If they wait until the trade deadline, Offman becomes a rental piece who might not have enough time to make a meaningful impact. By acting now, they're investing in both the present and the future. For the Rangers, moving Offman early allows them to pivot and address other needs before the market gets competitive. If they wait until the deadline, every team in the league is making moves, prices are inflated, and opportunities are limited. By acting now, they have flexibility and options. The Canucks are also in a unique position where they're playing well enough to justify adding pieces, but not so well that they can afford to stand pat. They're third in the Pacific Division, which is good, but not great. They need to keep building, keep improving, and keep pushing to separate themselves from the pack. Offman could be the piece that helps them do exactly that. Let's be honest about the potential downsides here, because no trade is without risk. The biggest concern is that Offman simply can't make the jump to full-time NHL player. Maybe the speed is too much, maybe the defensive responsibilities overwhelm him, maybe he just doesn't have that extra gear that separates good AHL players from NHL regulars. If that happens, Vancouver has wasted 2 draft picks on a player who never contributes. There's also the chemistry concern. Just because Offman has talent doesn't mean he'll fit seamlessly into Vancouver's system. Hockey is a team sport, and individual talent only matters if it meshes with the collective. If Offman can't adapt to Tocchet's system or doesn't develop chemistry with his line mates, he becomes a square peg in a round hole. Finally, there's the opportunity cost. Those draft picks could be used to acquire other players or select prospects who might develop into contributors. By committing them to Offman, Vancouver is betting on his upside over other potential options. If a better opportunity emerges later in the season, they might not have the assets to pursue it. But here's the thing about risk. It's inherent in every decision. The question isn't whether there's risk, it's whether the potential reward justifies the risk. And in this case, for a Canucks team that's trying to build a championship contender, the answer is yes. When you step back and look at the big picture, this trade makes sense for everyone involved. The Canucks get a talented young forward with upside at a reasonable price. The Rangers get draft capital for a player who doesn't fit their plans. And Offman gets a fresh start with an organization that can give him the opportunity he needs to succeed. These are the kinds of trades that define successful franchises, identifying undervalued assets, taking calculated risks, and building depth through smart acquisitions. Vancouver has positioned itself as a team on the rise, and adding Offman could be the move that accelerates that rise. The pieces are in place, the motivation is there, and the opportunity is knocking. Now it's up to Patrick Allvin to answer the door and make the call to New York. Because sometimes the difference between a good team and a great team is the willingness to take a chance on a player who just needs the right opportunity to shine. So, what do you think? Should the Canucks pull the trigger on this trade? Or is Offman too risky for what they'd be giving up? Would you rather see Vancouver stand pat and ride their current hot streak, or make a move to build for the long term? I'm genuinely curious where you stand on this, so drop your thoughts in the comments and let's debate it. And if you found this breakdown helpful, show some love with a like, and let's keep the conversation going. The Canucks are building something special, and moves like this could be exactly what pushes them over the top.